Okay, we are live. So for anybody who's already here, we're just going to give it a few minutes to allow people to join in before we start speaking. So, welcome and make yourselves at home, and we'll start in just a few minutes. So, welcome and make yourselves at home, and we'll start in just a few minutes. That's not good. Oh. It looks like we have 8 folks with us. Let's a bit longer.
Hey. Yay.
James, oh, excellent. Well done. In nick of time. So we're just giving people a chance to join us before we get started. And yeah, we've got camera, so that's good. And just to say to folks in the audience, we'll be taking your questions. Hopefully we'll have quite a good chunk of time for that at the end. So please do ask your questions in the chat as you go along, as they occur to you, and we will collate those and ask them a bit later on. And feel free to say hello in the chat as well, just so we know that it's working.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, okay. Folks joining there.
Yes. Hello.
Hooray! Yes.
Hello, Frank.
You can hear us. This is good. Yeah. Also, let us know about technical problems.
Yay!
Let us know if you can hear. Right. Okay. So yeah, that's a few folks join now. So I think we will get started. Just to say welcome, everybody who's joined us. This is a Zebras Unite webcast on behalf of the Zebras Unite chapters in Scotland and in London. Zebras Unite is a community, a movement of people around the world who are interested in doing things differently in a more ethical, inclusive startup culture to provide essentially an alternative to the what might consider traditional Silicon Valley venture capital startup culture, the approach with sort of growth at all costs and valuation over anything else. We're looking at innovating ways to do business differently. That is collaborative, inclusive, includes more people as founders and as customers, so we can serve each other. The zebra is our icon, an alternative icon to the unicorn. So obviously a zebra is real and a unicorn is mythological. The zebra is about having a real business model that is sustainable. A zebra is both black and white, and for us that is about being for profit and for social good, public good, and balancing those two. And zebras are group animals. They collaborate and are stronger for doing so. And so that is our vision for the zebra movement. And we are Absolutely delighted to welcome people into our community. We have an online community which you can join at Mighty Networks. You can read about Zebras Unite on our website at zebrasunite.com. And we have local chapters as well, people who meet together to talk about these different ways of doing things and to support each other on that journey. So I am the chapter leader for Zebras Unite in Scotland. And we have various events going on throughout the year if you'd like to join us. We also have a Zebras Unite chapter in London, and we have a community manager, Esme, with us. I don't know if you want to say a few words, Esme, about what's going on in London.
Yes, I think you've summed up Zebras Unite really nicely. So yeah, I'm the community manager alongside Shiza, who is the leader, but she can't be here today. So we are, just like the Scotland chapter, building a community of Zebra founders, investors, ecosystem supporters who want to come together and learn how to do things differently. For the London chapter, we have an active Slack group where you can ask questions from like fundraising support to good events in London, like what's happening. We also run events. I'm also going to be doing a investor roundtable in October. And yeah, join us if you're interested in that. And we're super excited to start the conversation today. And I'll hand it over to James and Vico.
Thank you, Esme, and thank you, Daisy. So it's really good. It's really fantastic to be invited to speak to the Zebra community. The alignment between cooperatives, and we're going to hear a lot more about co-ops in the next hour. And what you're trying to do is it's just a really natural fit in terms of addressing real needs, real social problems, and real life challenges. And we think there's huge opportunity for co-ops to continue to do what it's always done, which is address those needs head on and provide innovative solutions to address the balance a little bit. So I'm James from Co-operatives UK. We are a small outfit based up in Manchester, but we represent the UK's cooperative movement. So we directly represent about 800 businesses in membership, and there are over 7,000 co-ops businesses across the UK. And they vary in scales and sectors. So there are the co-ops on the high street where you might pop in to grab your last minute bits of shopping. But there's also energy and housing co-ops addressing everyday needs. And there's a growing movement within the cooperative sector to look at digital co-ops, specifically platform co-ops. I'm going to talk a bit more about those in a minute. What makes co-ops unique is that they're all owned and controlled by their members. So this idea of democratic ownership, distributed ownership, which I think is a prevalent theme as we look to counter some of the issues around extractive wealth, dominant monopolies, and there's a whole host of issues with sort of the Silicon Valley VC-funded tech scene. And so we think there's opportunities for co-ops to do that. So we're that representative body. We aim to catalyse and help support the growth of new co-ops. And we're going to hear from a really exciting new growing co-op a little bit later. But I just wanted to say that a couple of years ago, the cooperative movement came together and it wrote a national strategy to sort of help identify opportunities where we could see growth in the co-op movement. And one of those areas was this idea of platform co-ops. And so there's those 7,000 businesses and those 800 members of Co-operatives UK are really keen to see this area grow. And so building relationships with people, with your community and with the startups and founders is really what we're hoping to achieve here today. I want to talk a bit more about some of the specifics in terms of fundraising, but I'm going to hand over to my colleague Vika, who's just joined Co-ops UK as our new Co-ops Venture Program Manager, to sort of unpick what we mean by platform co-op and probably add a bit of colour to what's actually happening out there globally at the moment.
Hi, everyone. Hi. So yeah, I thought I would just give a quick introduction of what we mean by platform co-ops. I'll start from what most of us already experience, which is like online platforms. So I guess most of us have either experienced the use of Airbnb or Deliveroo or Uber, and they have definitely transformed the way that we live. And they are like creating like they're quite useful both for us users and also for the people that are providing things on these platforms. So what they have done is that they've created a one-stop directory for many services and removed middlemen in a lot of services. They also allow a lot of flexibility and autonomy, both for those of us who use them and for those that provide products or services on these platforms. And they also offer often certain types of standardized benefits like insurance, trust verifications, and some level of participation. So you can interact with the platform, you can approve, if you like, the person that's providing you the service and so on. But as people are becoming more and more aware, they have also some problematics. And I'll just go through some of them. So first of all, like they have created quite a strong dependence on precarious income. And we've seen this, and very often not providing employee rights to the people that are using the platform. So we've seen this more and more with the Deliveroo and Uber. They're creating problems at the level of the city, of how the cities are being impacted by the platforms. But also the owners of the platform can exert quite a lot of top-down control on the users. And so from one day to the other, your account could be cancelled, and so effectively you could be fired from the platform. And at the same time, they've been fighting quite strongly unionizations or class actions. So even Airbnb, for example, when you sign up to their terms and conditions, you waive your right to any class action. And they have had a very aggressive form of going to market, which is very much driven by the VC funding. And so their tendency is to want to become global monopolies in a certain sector. And through this, they have done this also thanks to technology. So thanks to the fact that through these platforms, they can gain a lot of data. And it's unclear how this data is used and what rights we have on this data. But they also have been very powerful in circumventing regulation or anticipating regulation and presenting themselves to regulators as the solutions to the problems of the economic crisis and so on. So what we're proposing is that actually it's not necessarily the technology itself that's a problem. And actually platforms have been around for centuries. Even before we had the current technological development, we can think of markets, we can think of newspapers as platforms. So we're suggesting that we could use this technology in a different way, and that the core aspect to look at is the governance and the ownership of these platforms. And that's why we're talking about platform cooperativism. So platform cooperativism suggests that actually these platforms could be democratically run and collectively owned by their users. And this could bring then other added values that are typical of the cooperative sector. So shared value between the stakeholders, facilitate fair and just consumption, provide fair and just working conditions, offer forms of social security to their members, be intentional in the use of technology and data. And they could leverage what technology has brought in the current years. So the fact that you can build these big businesses with actually limited assets. You can use a network effect generated by the participatory processes and use data in a conscious way, but that can help the business to scale, to build the business and to scale it. I think maybe this is enough as an introduction, but I'm happy to respond to any questions on also what are the challenges and how we can grow the platform cooperative sector together.
Thanks, Vika. And perhaps now's a good time to come in with an example of what we think Co-operatives UK can do in this space before we can hear back from people, from listeners today, so that we can kind of pull all those questions together. There isn't a development agency or a business support program in the UK that's really that's focusing on this area, and we recognise there's huge opportunity. So we're using our national position to try to catalyse the support and growth of this movement of platform cooperatives. And so a couple of years ago, we committed to trying to support the first platform co-ops that were emerging in the UK, and we're going to hear from Emma and the fantastic Equal Care Co-op in a minute to talk about their story and the support that they've received. So we wanted to support a handful to create that line of sight to say that these are viable platforms and that they can flourish and thrive in a very aggressive marketplace. But also to demonstrate that the governance and co-ownership models work in this sort of technological realm. What we've been doing more recently is taking this concept on the road and trying to speak to startups, to founders, to entrepreneurs who are developing new platforms to say, you won't be told by your traditional business advisor that there is a cooperative co-ownership solution out there. And so we're really campaigning for this concept to at least be put in front of founders, so that they consider it before they get to the point of incorporation or before they start securing inward investment from angel or VC capital investors, to say that there are alternative means to growth. And specifically, we believe there's an opportunity for platform co-ops to work with their communities, their network, they galvanize on those platforms to raise the capital that they need to scale and grow. And so early this year, Co-operatives UK launched a call to create a new investment fund as an alternative to VC investment to help the next wave of platform co-ops get off the ground in the UK, to provide them with the early stage seed capital that they need to develop and put their products into the market. We didn't just create this concept out of nowhere. It follows 10 years of development in this space, in the community co-op space. And so community cooperatives have been taking over assets in their local areas for years now. And they've been raising the capital to do that through something called Community Shares, which is a brand of social investment. And Community Shares has enabled cooperatives to go to their membership or their community and ask that community to invest in them using an equity share issue. So it feels like crowdfunding, but actually it's equity based. And for that equity investment, the investors have a stake in that cooperative as a member of that cooperative. So they have an opportunity to help shape and steer its direction. And Co-operatives UK believe that the same model can be applied from a community of a geographic community to a community of interest on a platform. We've been really, really delighted to be able to support Equal Care Co-op and piloting an initial investment into Equal Care to demonstrate that this model is viable. So I think the best way to bring this to life and to make it feel real is for us to bring in Emma, who's the driving force behind this new platform co-op, and to hear how they've gone about raising the capital they needed to get from that really early stage development to where they are now. So I'm going to hand, if okay with Esme and Daisy, hand over to Emma.
Yes, of course. Please do. Emma, take it away.
Great. Hi, Emma.
Hi, James. Thank you. Yeah, so the Equal Care Co-op journey started a few years ago. My background's in social care and kind of mental health and advocacy services. And I didn't come at it going, oh, I'd like to start a platform co-op. I didn't even come at it from the perspective of a co-op. I sort of came at it from the perspective of power, really. So kind of where the power sat in social care, who buys the services, who makes those decisions, who makes the decisions about the workers, who makes the decisions about where the money goes, and contrasted it with a big narrative that was going on in social care, still going on in social care at the time, which is called co-production, which is basically this idea that power should be being moved out of the hands of commissioners of services, out of the hands of managers and service providers, and into the hands of the people who are receiving and giving those services. At the same time, that's a huge ask. It's really, really difficult to do in our existing kind of commissioning environment and the way that services and organizations work. So I was sort of cast around for organizational forms that were capable of doing this. My background's in charities. I found co-ops. And then I found platform co-ops through reading a paper that Trevor Schultz wrote back in 2016. And suddenly the sort of relatively formless ideas that I was having kind of coalesced, and they went, that's it. That's what we need to be. That's the wrapper, as it were. I also at this point found Zebras Unite, I think. So I found you guys sort of a couple of years ago and was so excited, really loved that unicorns versus zebras kind of really pithy table. And so actually was inspired by it and did one for us as well, for our sector. So traditional agencies versus equal care co-op. Since then, it's been a real we've been developing through bits and bobs of funding. So obviously kind of the usual equity raise investment route isn't open to us. Not that that's an easy route at all, but it is a route where investors understand the need for setting off as a business with a large amount of cash in your pocket. So we have kind of been the recipient of various small grants in order to get us to where we are now, which is at kind of feasibility and pilot stage. We ran a donation-based crowdfunder as well on top of that. And so sort of over the past year and a half, managed to raise around £100,000 in kind of various bits and bobs of grants. And we are now actively testing. We're the first platform cooperative in the UK to be testing this investment raise model of community shares to find out whether or not sorry, that's my partner. Okay, just to find out whether this is a form of investment that could potentially work for this emerging sector as well. The institutional support from Co-ops UK, like our development, I think, came at a very good time because a lot of people were starting to think about this problem in the UK, including Nesta, who we had a little bit of support from through their Share Lab program, and then through Co-ops UK as the Unfound accelerator program was just developing. So we were on that last year. The community share offer is as James said, it's a form of equity which is kind of withdrawable shares. So that means that the value of the investment doesn't change, and that investors effectively get paid kind of the equivalent of an interest rate. So we're offering 3% on ours, and then so this is what I kind of see us as sort of mimicking the private sector investor route with kind of a real mix of kind of grants and support as well. But instead of trying to find just a single angel investor, we need like a whole community of angels to invest in us. So yeah, we're at kind of pre-seed stage at the moment, and 2/3 of the way through our target to our share offer. So it's going okay, and I really hope that this will open up a route for the platform cooperatives to develop in the UK.
Okay, it is really, really good to hear that you're getting through your journey and you found a model that works for you. I'm just going to open up questions, but just everything that James and Vika and Emma you've been saying, it's really singing our song at Zebras, particularly about making sure that founders and entrepreneurs, when they have that idea, that they know that they have other options for choosing a model that will enable them to be inclusive and collaborative and to explore different types of investments. So to hear that you're using community shares in that way for communities of interest is absolutely fascinating, and really excited to see what other people want to hear about. Do we have any questions from the audience? Esme, I don't know if you
Not as yet.
Okay. Well, did you have any questions you wanted to ask, Esme? I think.
Yeah, I know you mentioned a few platform co-ops that you would try out. I would love to hear more about the other different kinds of platforms. And like, I think it would be good to know sort of what other options there are in terms of platforms.
I can talk about a handful. I was at a session this morning, one of our roadshow sessions in Manchester, and in the audience we heard from 2 people looking to set up new platform co-ops and were keen to understand the model and how it works a bit. So I can kind of talk to those and a handful of other examples. But the way that we promote this to early stage founders and startups is it's an imagine question. So imagine if music producers and creators owned the platform. So imagine if Spotify was owned by the content generators. Imagine if drivers owned Uber. And I think it's just sort of, it's flipping that power dynamic and control dynamic completely on its head. And by imagining those people in control in a democratic process, it starts to raise some questions about, well, would we have done it this way in terms of our growth? Would we treat our drivers in this way? Would we give artists a fairer deal? So the 2 examples that I came across this morning was a group of bid writers and people who are working as sole traders, who are providing on a regular contract basis input into large businesses who are sort of securing innovation funding from state and government. And there's no mechanism for them to collaborate. There's also no mechanism for them to pool to collective knowledge and resources to be able to sort of submit as one. And so they're interested in creating a platform where lots of people could retain their independent status, but sort of coordinate and pitch for work on a single platform. So they aggregate their scale, but it also creates an opportunity for them to share expertise. So they might be able to accept work for a project and only be able to deliver half of it and collaborate with another partner who's got the skills and expertise to deliver against the other half. So that's really interesting because suddenly you don't need to have a direct community in a local area of bid writers or finance directors who understand how to develop budgets, but it can be national or international, and the quality and the capacity for a broad range of expertise is just widens instantly, and all of that can be facilitated via a platform that they then shape and control its direction in terms of the markets that they advertise in first, etc., the clients that they accept. That's really interesting, and a really similar model. We're talking to a group of translators, people who translate for the National Health Service, for the police service, for a judicial service. So they might be at tribunals or on jury service. And again, these are people who like the flexibility of that type of work. It's piecemeal work, but at the moment it's provided through agencies that tend to take huge amounts off the top and don't really offer a huge amount of flexibility in the type of opportunities that are put in front of them. And so by creating a platform that they control and shape, provides them with an opportunity to do that. And so these are groups of people who are highly skilled in their individual area, but feel like they're being exploited. And I think by pooling resources, they're looking or hoping to be able to be in a position to develop platforms that enable them to aggregate at scale. So those are just a couple of examples. And that's just in the UK, and we're a little bit behind the sector or the sort of the global movement. And there's examples in Latin America, in India, in a lot well established in the United States, covering all sorts of different sectors and scales. And so these are businesses that are trading, generating healthy profit margins to scale and grow. And so we see, there's no reason why the UK tech scene is as strong as it is, shouldn't be following suit and adopting some of these, well, that might be seen as innovative, but just to us seems absolutely practical and common sense approaches to development.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really, really useful, at least for me, to be able to see these more tangible ways of implementing co-ops. Let's see if we have any questions. Aha! how do the governance arrangements work in practice for the Equal Care Co-op, Emma? Can you just explain a bit more about how you manage all the relationships between workers and members?
Yeah, so our I think of this as like our foundational structure is based on several classes of membership. So we have 4 classes, 3 of which have kind of full voting rights in effect. So it's 1 member, 1 vote. And then the 4th class has got a proportional voting right of 10%. And those 3 classes are supported members. So that's anyone who's being supported by the cooperative, whether that's paid or voluntary support that they're getting. Advocate members, so that's anyone who is a family or a friend, family member or a friend of someone being supported who's not able to represent themselves through cooperative membership. And worker members, and so that's anyone providing their labour to the cooperative. So you can be an employee, you can be a volunteer, you can be an independent worker, it doesn't matter. And then the 4th category is investor members. And this is where we significantly diverge from normal community share offers, because the investor member group are not directly involved in the business of the cooperative. So they are the supportive membership that is obviously helping us do what we want to do, but they have a smaller proportion, well, quite a much smaller proportion of the vote share in order to preserve our purpose, which is to ensure that the decision-making power sits with the people who are giving and receiving the support, but also to allow us to take investment as well. On top of that layer, there's another layer, which is the sociocratic governance layer. So that's like a circle-based governance, which is a kind of decentralized form of being able to make decisions in the areas where those decisions need to be made. So we're this year, as we're setting up our 2 pilot community circles. One's in a very small village on the tops, so on hills, and then the other is in a market town of Hebden Bridge. And these are community circles. So the idea is that the people involved in those circles are the people who are closest to the problem in their area. So as a member of a circle, you are then in charge of coordinating and organizing the care and support in that area. And that can be professional care and support workers, it can be family members, it can be volunteers, it can be people receiving support themselves. It's a multidisciplinary kind of group. And then there are kind of various decision-making processes that we use that sociocracy brings to the table to basically ensure these 2 kind of twin things. One is equivalence, so that everybody has a voice. The other is effectiveness, so that we don't all have a voice together and not ever make a decision. Yeah, there's quite a lot of detail into how that works, but suffice to say, once you've kind of learned the basics, then it's quite easy to forget about. And it just sort of, yeah, happens. So I much prefer sociocratic meetings to any other type of meeting, I can tell. So I'm going to say that
now. Brilliant. I hope that answered your question, Isla. Question from Timothy, maybe to James or Vico. Do either of your platforms have chapters in the US, specifically Nashville? And have you worked with Code for America or My Society in the UK?
I'll just pop up there to say that we've had somebody else reply saying that Start.coop from America is actually on the call. So there's
That's great. So there isn't an Unfound chapter or instance in the States, but we, like I said earlier, we are following the lead of a lot of pioneers in the States, emerging out of the New School and Trevor Schultz's work a few years ago. But we do have those relationships. There's been some international conferences on this topic. Vika and I both are excited and hold relationships with partners stateside. And like I say, there's a wealth of really out there. And so hopefully what we are doing is we're innovating in a context that's appropriate for UK and the UK legislation. So you couldn't just replicate the community share model elsewhere. It needs to sit within appropriate sort of legislation. But then in terms of support structures, I think we've got a lot to learn from our friends over the pond. So I guess the answer is yes, the relationships and connections are there, and I hope we can build on that, and hopefully the Zebra community can be part of that too. Vika, I'm sure you've got something to add to this as well.
I just wanted to add for anyone watching from the US that there will be a conference in New York in November, bringing together practitioners, researchers on platform co-ops at the new school. So look out for that.
And I was just going to add that obviously there are Zebras Unite chapters all over the US as well. So please do join the online community, and I'm sure you'll find Zebras in Nashville. Esme, did you want to add something there? Oh, I think muted.
So many more questions. One here. I'm just wondering, what are some of the main challenges you all have experienced in starting and developing platform co-ops? Maybe one for Emma. You want to get started?
So many. So many. So it doesn't. One of them is actually kind of a diversity challenge, I guess. I didn't quite realize how little kind of funding actually went to female-led and female-owned businesses until I started doing this. I was like, oh, okay, really not very much. So the funding gap has always been a challenge. I mean, some funders have looked and gone, oh, that's a bit ambitious. Are you sure? Are you sure that's what you want to do? So kind of, I think being able to kind of map our ambitions and then kind of finding the right funders, that's been kind of one of the biggest challenges, which it feels like we're just at the emergent point actually from that. Another challenge has just been explaining it to people. So kind of getting the messaging right and being able to, like, there's actually quite a few moving parts to this idea. So kind of getting it across in really kind of simple to understand, not using words like sociocracy, for example, not using the term platform co-op, but yeah, and the majority of our users aren't very kind of digital savvy anyway on both the worker and the receiving side. So I think we have quite a sort of special set of challenges there. What's another challenge? Oh God, there's so many challenges. I think I did a blog post for Nesta kind of last year, and there was a huge list of challenges that I kind of set out in that, and realized that the only easy thing about this has been deciding to do it in the first place, and that's never really changed, which I've been quite surprised by actually. But yeah, it's a long list. It's a long list.
I think our experience as Co-operatives UK, seeing a handful of the groups that are exploring this and asking for advice and guidance, there are two kind of core challenges. One is at those very early stages, which is where do we find the money to do this? And so that's why we're calling for the launch of a fund in the UK to help groups or emerging co-ops like Equal Care to spend the time that they need to be spending on developing and honing in on their idea, putting things into the market, testing and innovating, failing forwards without losing momentum, because it's hard work. Just even observing it as an outsider, it's incredibly hard work. And so how do we remove that friction, I think, of just the concerns of those early stage developments. Then the other side of it is actually doing it in an accountable way with your co-op and all your members or your growing membership. And so that can slow the process of development down because it takes time to bring people around a table or to make collective decision making. And so we're finding that people are asking questions about how does that process work? How do you remain agile and test and develop and etc. And I think it's about making sure you put effective governance systems in place at an appropriate time. probably not right at the beginning. I think you need to get on and just start working and doing, and then hopefully the governance systems start to manifest themselves naturally, and then you formalize those. We would never recommend anyone jumps into incorporation and sets up a legal form and spends months honing in on their governance structures to lose sight of the fact that they're trying to develop a product and a service, and to do it in a slightly different way. So I guess from an outsider watching others do it, that's our observations.
Just a very brief coda to that. We've found that developing our governance has direct implications on the technology, the product, and the model. So the two things, although they do run parallel, they're incredibly intertwined. So yeah, that's a further kind of, complexity to it, but also excitement.
I was just going to add another challenge, which is a challenge that is faced by all platform businesses, which is really finding a way to attract users, but of both different types, the users that actually use the services and the users that provide the services. And that's an even more important challenge for platform co-ops that aren't going to be based on VC funding, because this is very often done through massive marketing strategies or incentives for those supplying the services. But it's even more crucial because they're the member base, and so they're actually the people who could be providing the funding. So I think it's a really interesting space that we have to understand how these communities of interest work and can help grow the movement.
Brilliant, thank you. I think a quick question from Mark for Emma. What is the size of the membership of Equal Care at this point in time?
About 40. It's going up quite a lot with the because of the open community share offer as well. So that's another group of around kind of another 40 or so investor members. But yeah, that's where we're sort of hovering at.
Perfect. I think that's all the questions we have. Some nice compliments saying thanks for sharing, and some people connecting on there, so that's good.
Yeah.
I think all the questions.
There's one more that we could maybe address, which is what are some of the resistance you've heard from the startup world in receiving the idea of platform co-ops, and how have you been able to speak over those fears and resistance? I think that's a really intriguing question, certainly from our perspective. I don't know if James or Vika or Emma, you want to take that one?
To our events, we're attracting people that are already kind of interested in looking at other forms. But I think one of the biggest resistance is the myth of the founder. So that's an interesting one. But it's also I think it's really important to highlight how investment does impact the founders and how they do lose control through other forms of more extractive funding, and how this can actually allow multiple funders to keep power over their ideas and their platforms. So I think that's one of the spaces that we can work in.
I mean, the other one is just, how do I get my money back? Because the majority of investors into early stage businesses are expecting to get their money back through a sale. And we are not selling. There is no intention. And that's in the DNA. Platform co-ops aren't set up with the expectation of an exit. So it works much more like a kind of bond or debt finance, where you're looking at repaying the money back over kind of a set period of time, and kind of releasing the capital gradually. But then also using kind of successive community offers in order to drive growth. But yeah, so it's a different response to that question, but it's also one that investors are like, what is this community shares thing? I don't get it. So yeah, it's very much targeted at the kind of the socially conscious impact investor space, which is relatively small compared to yeah, the
It
rest.
is, yeah, absolutely. It's small, but in the last 10 years, 500 societies have raised over 150 million pounds through the community share issues model in the UK alone. So there are investors out there. There are platforms facilitating that investment and bringing those networks of social investors together and bridging some of the divides. I think there's a huge education piece around the expectation of what investment offers, and I think we're at the early stages of a transition between what is rightfully expected as a return from investment, because, and Emma, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but investment in equal care is still quite a high risk venture. While when Co-operatives UK have invested, there's still a lot of unknowns. It's still quite early stage, and while we would love to see it succeed, it could be perceived as quite high risk, but no more high risk than another digital startup or venture. And so it's just, I think, being able to put platform co-ops on an equal footing, I think is a big challenge. We need to be able to, they need to be seen to be as comparable, both in terms of their opportunity that they offer investors, but also the broader opportunity they offer sort of socially. And once they're seen as equals, then their USP will shine through. And I think that's the big challenge. And the way we do that is by educating the startup movement, by the business advisor community, by the advisor community, and we make sure that examples like Equal Care don't fail, and that we have these brilliant examples that we can signpost to demonstrate how it works in practice. And so why we're taking Unfound on the road and to speak to these kinds of communities is we want to hear from as many people as possible about their ideas, understand where the demand is, what the opportunities are, so that we can help shape the support that's required to get to that point. And so if there are any budding platform cooperators out there with an idea, please get in touch, and you can email us at unfound@uk.coop. And Vika and I'll pick that up and try and share as much information as we can.
Thank you, James. That's really good. I think it's really exciting what you're doing with community shares, and there's no one perfect investment solution that'll fit everybody. But I think community share offers do have some of the best features of equity and of debt that can really suit what you're trying to do. So it's exciting to hear the ways that you're using that. I don't think we have any more questions, Esme. I thought I think we're at the end of that. So
yeah,
is there anything else, Esme, James, Vika, that you want to add? One tip or piece of advice, if somebody's thinking about doing this, what would you say?
Do it. I would say let's all rally behind Equal Care and other early stage adopters to demonstrate that there is a really viable alternative. And I think Share Issue is a great opportunity for us to do that as a community of people who really want to see change in the tech industry and in this space. And then become champions of the concept and take this back to your workplaces or to your sort of your networks, and informally share as much information about these alternatives. So if it's not doing it yourself, it's to just make sure that the message spreads that there are viable options and alternatives out there. Don't cede control in order to test your idea.
Anything from you, Emma?
And just, find your people, find the people that you want to do it with. And work closely. Don't rush things. I also like thinking about the community shares. I mean, it will never ever be like normal comparable investment, because the amount that you're kind of asking for from individuals is always going to be much lower than any early stage startup is looking for from a single angel investor. So kind of the risk to amount invested is kind of much lower. And there is so much strength in diversity in that. So the fact that by the time we finish our share offer raise, we're not going to have kind of 3 investors round our cap table. I learned this word the other day. We're going to have kind of a community of sort of 60, 70, 80 people who've put in anything from £100 to 30,000, plus the institutional investment support from Co-ops UK and other co-ops that are coming in on this. So, and to be supported by a crowd feels so much stronger and more resilient than it does from, you know, just being subject to the whims of kind of, you know, one grumpy angel. I don't know, where you really have to pander to that if you're a small startup, and you know you've got one investor who's kind of sitting around your board table and who's going, well, why haven't you done it? You know, you should go in this direction, you should go in that direction. So I think it offers a really viable and interesting alternative to the way that businesses can be funded and developed. Yeah, as well.
Okay, and Vika, any last tips from you?
Yeah, I think what Emma said at the start, you know, that she didn't go out thinking about setting up a platform co-op. I think, you know, you need to be really driven by what you're passionate about. And we've seen it so much in the tech sector about, oh, I just want to be the one that, you know, creates the next best app or platform. While these ideas really survive because there's like a lot of passion behind them and interest in creating a different type of community around your product. And so, yeah, believe in that. Go ahead.
Great. I think I would also reiterate what Emma said about find your people, and hopefully you can maybe find that in the Zebras Unite community as well, because there's a lot of, I think, sympathetic people with the same ideas and wanting to support this type of business. So yeah, please do check out unfound.coop, check out zebrasunite.com and join our community to learn more about this, more about different ways, and support the community of people who are out there doing it. I also would say thank you to James and Vika and to Emma for giving up their time.
Sorry, I can't leave this without talking about the web address of the share offer.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, sorry. It's on FX platform, which is ethex.org.uk /equal care. We're also on the front page, and there's a delivery going on in my living room at the moment. So sorry for the background noise. But yeah, please go there and you'll find out all of the information for the share offer document there. And you can also get in touch with me as well if you have any more questions about it.
Okay, excellent shout. Yes, there we are. Front page of FX. That's really good. So hopefully you get lots of support there. Well done for putting that in at the last minute. Okay, anything else from you, Esme, before we say goodbye?
No, just thank you so much for sharing everything and being honest about this. It's been really, really insightful.
Yeah, I think it really has. And thank you to everybody in the audience for participating and your questions. It's been a really interesting discussion. And yeah, thank you to everybody, and we will say goodbye there. We'll see you next time.